100 facts about the Rugby World Cups to quickly fall asleep. Part 1. Welcome to a gentle journey through rugby history. Get comfortable, settle into your pillow, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's travel back through time to explore the story of the Rugby World Cup, from its humble and controversial beginnings to the moment when the Northern Hemisphere finally broke through. This is a story of triumph and heartbreak, of underdogs and dynasties, of moments that transcended sport itself and became part of global cultural history. Let the soothing rhythm of these stories carry you toward peaceful rest. Prologue. The birth of a global tournament, 1987. Before we talk about winners and scores, before we discuss tries and conversions and drop goals, before we celebrate champions and commiserate with the defeated, let's take a long moment to understand why the Rugby World Cup even exists. This is not a simple story. For years, for decades even, stretching back through the 1950s and 1960s and into the 1970s, the very idea of a global rugby tournament faced enormous, almost insurmountable resistance from within the sport itself, from the very people who controlled and administered the game. Rugby union was an amateur sport, and not just casually amateur, but fiercely, ideologically proud of its amateur traditions and its amateur ethos. This was considered fundamental to the sport's character and identity. Players didn't get paid a single penny for their efforts on the field. They played purely for the love of the game, for their local clubs where they had grown up, for their countries when called upon for international duty. They had regular jobs during the week, working as teachers, farmers, police officers, businessmen, laborers. They trained in the evenings after work, often in muddy fields with basic equipment. On weekends, they played rugby because they loved it, because it brought them together with their teammates and friends, because it gave them purpose and belonging. Many administrators, committee members, and traditionalists within rugby's governing bodies feared deeply that a World Cup would threaten that purity, that it would inevitably open the door to professionalism, to money flowing into the sport, to commercialization and sponsorship deals, to players becoming celebrities rather than amateurs. They worried that the soul of rugby would be lost, that the values of teamwork, humility, and playing for honor rather than money would disappear. These were not trivial concerns to them. These men had given their lives to rugby as they understood it, and they genuinely believed they were protecting something precious. But the world was changing rapidly around rugby union, whether the traditionalists liked it or not. Other sports had embraced professionalism decades earlier. Football, or soccer as it's known in some countries, had been professional since the late 1800s. American sports were entirely professional. Even rugby league, the cousin sport that had split from rugby union back in 1895 over the issue of player payments, was thriving as a professional sport. Television was bringing sports into millions of homes, creating audiences and commercial opportunities that had never existed before. The 1970s and 1980s saw an explosion in sports broadcasting and sports marketing. Rugby union risked being left behind entirely, becoming an increasingly niche amateur sport while the world moved on without it. There were also practical issues that could no longer be ignored. The major rugby nations wanted to play each other more regularly, wanted to test themselves, wanted to determine definitively who was the best in the world. The informal tours and championship matches were no longer sufficient. Players were amateur in name, but the best players were already receiving under-the-table payments, jobs that required little actual work, houses provided by wealthy supporters, cars with free petrol. The amateur system was becoming hypocritical and unsustainable, riddled with secret arrangements and winking agreements. Finally, after years of heated debate and careful discussion, after countless committee meetings and negotiations, after New Zealand and Australia pushed hard for change and convinced enough other nations to support the idea, in 1987, the dream became reality. The International Rugby Board, known simply as the IRB, the governing body of World Rugby, took the bold and historic step of organizing the very first Rugby World Cup. This was a genuine turning point for the sport, a moment when rugby union chose to step into the modern world. Rugby was about to step onto the global sporting stage in a way it never had before. Competing for attention and prestige with football's World Cup, with the Olympic Games, with other major international sporting events that captured the world's imagination. The decision of who would host this inaugural tournament was relatively straightforward. Two great rugby nations in the Southern Hemisphere, nations where rugby union was woven into the cultural fabric, opened their doors to host this historic event. New Zealand and Australia, fierce rivals on the rugby field with a rivalry dating back to 1903, but united in their deep love of the game and their desire to see it grow globally, would share the honor of hosting. They would share the magnificent stadiums, share the organizational responsibilities, share the financial risks, and share the dream of making this inaugural tournament such a success that it would establish rugby union as a truly global sport capable of capturing worldwide attention. 16 teams from around the world were invited to gather and compete. This was a carefully chosen number, large enough to be genuinely global and inclusive, small enough to be manageable and to ensure high-quality matches. Teams came from the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, from rugby's traditional heartlands in the British Isles and France, where the game had been played for over a century, and from nations where the sport was still relatively young and developing, still finding its identity and building its traditions. They were ready to compete for something that had never existed before in rugby union, a true world championship, a tournament that would definitively determine the best rugby nation on earth. Of course, this new competition needed a trophy, and not just any trophy, but something worthy of this new global competition, something beautiful and meaningful that would inspire generations of players to come and become as iconic as any trophy in world sport. And so with great ceremony and symbolism, the Webb Ellis Cup was introduced to the world for the first time. It was named after William Webb Ellis, the young man credited in rugby legend, rightly or wrongly, depending on which historian you consult, and how much credence you give to the story, with inventing rugby itself through a moment of spontaneous rule-breaking. The legend passed down through generations and now firmly embedded in rugby mythology, regardless of its historical accuracy, tells us that in 1823, during a football match at rugby school in the English Midlands, young William Webb Ellis, a student at the school, picked up the ball during play and ran with it toward the opponent's goal line, breaking the established rules of the game being played at the time. Whether this story is entirely true, partially mythologized and embellished over the decades, or complete romantic fiction created after the fact, doesn't really matter anymore at this point. What matters is that his name became synonymous with rugby union. His alleged act of inspired rule breaking became the origin myth of the sport. And now his name would grace the most prestigious trophy in world rugby. The Webb Ellis Cup itself is a beautiful piece of craftsmanship. Made of gilded silver, standing just over a foot tall, it features two handles and a lid, designed in a classical style that speaks to rugby's long history and traditions. Crafted in 1906 by silversmiths in London, it was originally a trophy for an entirely different purpose before being repurposed for the World Cup. It weighs about 4.5 kilograms, and when players lift it above their heads in victory, it represents the culmination of years of sacrifice, training, and dedication. This golden trophy would become one of sport's most coveted prizes, desired by rugby nations across the globe, fought for with incredible passion and commitment. The tournament format chosen for this first World Cup was straightforward and logical, yet it was designed to create excitement and drama from the very beginning. Teams were placed into pools, groups where they would play round-robin matches against each other, everyone playing everyone else in their pool. Every game mattered enormously from the first whistle. Every point scored, every try touched down in the corner, every penalty kicked between the posts. Every conversion, every dropped goal could potentially be the difference between advancing to the knockout stages and going home in disappointment. Your World Cup dream over before the real drama began. The pool stages would separate the strong from the weak, the prepared from the unprepared, the teams who could handle pressure from those who wilted under it. And then, once the pools were complete and the standings determined, came the real drama of elimination rugby, the knockout rounds, straight sudden death matches from the quarterfinals onward. Win and you continue, you live to fight another day, you keep your dreams of glory alive. Lose just once, have just one bad day on the field, make one crucial mistake at the wrong moment, and your World Cup dream was over completely. No second chances, no safety net, no opportunity to redeem yourself. That's the pure beauty and the absolute brutality of knockout rugby, where the pressure intensifies with every passing minute, where every decision by players and referees carries enormous weight. Now picture the venues for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine them. These were iconic grounds that had witnessed decades of rugby history, stadiums where legends had been made and broken over the years, where the ghosts of great matches from the past seemed to hover in the stands, where the grass held the echoes of tries scored and tackles made. Eden Park in Auckland, New Zealand's most famous rugby stadium, with its steep stands rising dramatically on all sides, and passionate crowds known for creating a cauldron of noise and emotion, where the atmosphere could lift a home team or crush the spirit of visiting sides. The ground had hosted the All Blacks since 1925, had seen countless memorable matches, and now it would host the very first World Cup final. Concord Oval in Sydney, where rugby league usually rules supreme with its faster-paced, more open style of play, but which now opened its arms and its gates to rugby union for this special tournament. Lancaster Park in Christchurch, a ground with its own rich history in New Zealand rugby. Athletic Park in Wellington, famous for its windy conditions that could make kicking a genuine challenge. Ballymore in Brisbane, a traditional rugby stronghold in Queensland. These stadiums, scattered across two nations separated by the Tasman Sea, hummed with anticipation in the weeks leading up to the tournament as fans from around the world descended upon New Zealand and Australia, many experiencing these beautiful countries for the first time, many making pilgrimages to watch rugby at its highest level. And as the tournament unfolded over those memorable weeks in May and June of 1987, as teams battled through pool matches and into knockouts, one team showed very quickly that they were in a class of their own, operating at a level above every other nation in the competition. New Zealand, the mighty All Blacks, the team in the famous black jerseys with the silver fern, in the late amateur era before professionalism would change everything about how rugby was played and prepared for, were simply and utterly dominant. They didn't just win matches, they demolished opponents with a combination of skill, power, and ruthless efficiency that left spectators in awe. Playing on home soil, with the weight and expectation of an entire nation of rugby-obsessed people on their shoulders, with every New Zealander from the far north to the deep south dreaming of seeing their team lift this magnificent new trophy, the All Blacks delivered performance after performance of breathtaking quality that seemed to get better with each match. Their forward pack was immense and powerful, an 8-man unit that worked with perfect synchronization, winning scrum after scrum with dominant pushing, securing line-out ball with precision timing, dominating the breakdown and winning turnover ball that their backs could use. Their backs were electric and creative, running with a freedom and skill that left defenders grasping at air, passing the ball with precision at speed, finding gaps that seemed impossibly small, scoring tries that combined individual brilliance with team coordination. And before each match, there was the haka, that intimidating traditional Maori challenge performed with fierce intensity, the players moving in unison, their eyes wide, their tongues out, their voices raised in the ancient chant. The haka sent shivers down spines and put fear into opponents before a single ball had even been kicked, a psychological weapon as much as a cultural tradition. The All Blacks progressed through their pool with ease, winning every match comfortably, then dispatched Scotland in the quarterfinals and Wales in the semifinals. They were unstoppable, a machine operating at peak efficiency, and the final at Eden Park seemed almost inevitable. The final was held at Eden Park in Auckland on June 20th, 1987. And from the opening whistle, from the moment the ball was kicked high into the warm New Zealand autumn air, it was never really in serious doubt. New Zealand faced France in the final, and France were no pushovers. They were a team with genuine flair and unpredictability, capable of producing moments of magic seemingly from nothing when the mood and inspiration took them. The French could beat anyone on their day with their attacking ambition and creativity. They had defeated Australia in the semi-finals, playing with the kind of joie de vivre that made them so beloved by neutral rugby fans worldwide. But this was not France's day. This was New Zealand's day, their moment of destiny. The All Blacks were too strong, too well organized, too hungry for victory in front of their home crowd of 48,000 people packed into Eden Park. The French tried to play their natural attacking game, tried to find gaps in the New Zealand defense, but they were met with a wall of black jerseys every time. New Zealand controlled the match from start to finish, dominating territory and possession, scoring tries with clinical precision. The scoreboard told the story clearly and without any ambiguity or controversy. 29 points to 9 at the final whistle. New Zealand were the first ever Rugby World Cup champions, and they had done it in comprehensively dominant style, on home soil, in front of their adoring fans who flooded onto the field at the final whistle in jubilant celebration, lifting players onto their shoulders, crying tears of joy, singing and dancing. The Webb Ellis Cup was lifted by Captain David Kirk, and New Zealand's rugby supremacy was confirmed for all the world to see. Meanwhile, in what is often dismissed as merely a consolation match that nobody really wants to play, the third place playoff had its own drama and genuine significance. Wales took on Australia in a match played at Rotorua, and it turned into a tightly contested encounter that went down to the wire and kept spectators on the edge of their seats throughout. Wales emerged victorious by the narrowest of margins, 22 points to 21. Just a single point separated the two proud rugby nations at the final whistle, a dramatic ending that showed this match had mattered to both teams. It was a reminder that even in defeat, even when you're not playing for the ultimate prize of the World Cup trophy itself, there can be honor, fierce pride, and edge of your seat excitement that makes the match worthwhile and memorable. One of the tournament's great revelations, one of the stories that captured imaginations and hearts, came from the Pacific Islands, from a small nation that would become beloved by rugby fans worldwide for their style of play. Fiji, a nation of just over 700,000 people at the time, a tiny scattered collection of islands in the vast Pacific Ocean, reached the quarterfinals of this first World Cup, exceeding many expectations. They played with pure joy visible on their faces, with blistering speed that left defenders trailing helplessly in their wake, with that unmistakable Fijian flair and natural athleticism that makes them so entertaining and exciting to watch. They threw passes that seemed impossible, long spiral passes that traveled 20 meters and somehow found their target, scored tries seemingly from nowhere with breathtaking footwork and support play, and smiled throughout their matches as if they were playing beach rugby back home rather than competing at a World Cup. The world took notice of this small island nation and their remarkable players. The so-called minnows, the teams expected to just make up the numbers, could actually bite, and bite hard when given the opportunity and when they played with confidence. And yet, for all the tournament's success, for all the wonderful free-flowing rugby played across New Zealand and Australia over those 6 weeks, for all the excitement and the global attention it generated, the first World Cup also showed very clearly how far the sport still had to grow globally, how much work needed to be done to spread rugby union beyond its traditional strongholds and geographic concentrations. Zimbabwe was the only African team to participate in that first World Cup. Just one nation representing an entire vast continent of over 50 countries. It was a sobering reminder that rugby's global reach was still severely limited, still developing and fragile, still heavily concentrated in certain regions where the British Empire had once held sway and where British culture had taken root. South Africa, which would have been the obvious African representative given their rugby strength and history, were still banned from international sport due to apartheid, their isolation continuing. But this was just the beginning of the journey for the Rugby World Cup, the first tentative step on what would become a long and remarkable road toward making rugby a truly global sport. The 1987 Rugby World Cup planted a seed in the soil of world sport, one that would grow and flourish over the decades to come into something truly magnificent and globally significant. It proved beyond doubt that a global rugby tournament could work successfully, could capture imaginations worldwide, could create moments of sporting brilliance and drama that would be remembered and replayed for generations. The dream had become reality, and rugby union had changed forever. Chapter 2, Tactics, Tradition, and the First Shift in Power, 1991. Let's continue our gentle journey through rugby history, moving forward 4 years to 1991. 4 years had passed since that groundbreaking first tournament in the Southern Hemisphere, 4 years of anticipation building, and rugby was ready and eager to do it all again. To prove that the first World Cup was not just a one-off experiment, but the beginning of a lasting tradition. But this time, things would be different in several important ways. This time, the approach would be new, and the location would shift northward across the equator to rugby's ancient European heartland, where the sport had been born over 150 years earlier. The World Cup was coming to Europe for the first time, to rugby's deepest roots, to the lands where the sport had been born and carefully nurtured for well over a century in schools and clubs. Not just one nation would host this time, but the tournament would be spread across the 5 nations' countries, those proud rugby nations who competed annually against each other in one of sport's oldest and most cherished tournaments. A competition that dated back to 1883. England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and France each would host matches in their famous stadiums. Each would welcome the world to their shores and their cities. It was a celebration of rugby's heritage and history, the birthplace of the game itself, now opening its doors in its most historic stadiums to teams from every corner of the globe, from the Pacific Islands to the Americas, to Africa, to Asia. The format remained familiar and fair to all competitors, building sensibly on the success and lessons learned from 4 years earlier. 16 teams once more, the same number as in 1987, divided carefully into pools where they would battle for advancement and survival, for the right to continue their World Cup dream into the knockout stages. And then, just like before, came the knockout rounds, the sudden death drama where absolutely everything was on the line, where winning meant everything and losing meant going home. Quarterfinals where dreams would be made or shattered in 80 intense minutes of rugby. Semi-finals where only the very best could advance, and the ultimate prize waiting at the end for the two teams good enough and fortunate enough to reach the final. The structure was simple and elegant in its design, easy for fans to understand, but it created endless drama and tested teams to their absolute limits, physically and mentally and emotionally. England emerged through the tournament as a formidable force shaped by pragmatism and tactical discipline, a very English approach to rugby that prioritized effectiveness over entertainment. Their game was built on solid foundations that had served English rugby for many generations, on principles passed down through decades of coaching wisdom. Strong, powerful forwards formed the cornerstone of their approach. Big men who dominated the set pieces with their size and technique. Winning scrums consistently with coordinated pushing power and lineouts with well-practiced timing and lifting. They kicked tactically and intelligently, using the boot to pin opponents deep in their own territory where they would be trapped, forcing them to play from positions of weakness, making them run the ball all the way from their own 22-meter line just to get back to halfway. It wasn't always the most beautiful rugby to watch for neutral fans hoping for exciting running and attacking play. It didn't always excite the romantics who love free-flowing open rugby, but it was brutally effective when executed properly with discipline and patience. And it carried England, match after match, through pool play with growing confidence, through a tough quarter-final, into a semi-final they won, and all the way to the final itself at Twickenham, where they would face Australia. But the tournament had its shocks, its moments that nobody saw coming, results that turned predictions upside down, and reminded everyone that rugby is an unpredictable sport where favorites can fall. Wales, one of the proud host nations, with all the history and tradition and passion that comes with Welsh rugby, with passionate supporters filling their stadiums in Cardiff and other Welsh venues singing their famous hymns and anthems, became the first host nation ever to be eliminated in the pool stage of a World Cup. It was a shocking and embarrassing result for Welsh rugby. At home in front of their own supporters who had traveled to cheer them on with songs and fervent hope, wearing their red jerseys and daffodils, their World Cup dream ended early and painfully. They had failed to escape their pool, finishing below the teams they desperately needed to beat. The defeat was crushing. It was a harsh reminder that hosting guarantees you absolutely nothing in sport, that home advantage can only take you so far, that you still have to perform when it matters most on the field. The weight of home expectation can sometimes crush teams rather than inspire them to greater heights. And Wales discovered this painful truth. France had been finalists just 4 years earlier in 1987, losing to New Zealand in that inaugural final in Auckland, but playing with their characteristic flair and attacking ambition. They were still considered one of the most dangerous teams in world rugby by analysts and opposing coaches, still feared for their unpredictability and their ability to produce moments of absolute brilliance seemingly from nowhere, to score tries that defied explanation. French rugby has always had a unique character, a willingness to take risks that other teams wouldn't dare attempt. Yet this time their tournament ended abruptly and disappointingly in the knockout stages before they could build any real momentum. England, playing with the discipline and determination that had become their trademark throughout the tournament, knocked them out in a quarterfinal in Paris that was tense and physical and bad-tempered at times. The famous French flair, that joie de vivre that made them so entertaining to watch and so beloved by neutral fans who appreciated their willingness to attack from anywhere, was extinguished by English efficiency and defensive organization. Meanwhile, from across the Atlantic Ocean, from North America, where rugby was still a relatively minor sport, Canada made their mark on the tournament in unexpected and memorable fashion. A nation far better known for ice hockey played on frozen ponds and rinks in the winter, for vast wilderness stretching from coast to coast, for rocky mountains and prairies and maple trees, reached the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. It remains their best ever finish at a World Cup to this day. A proud moment in Canadian rugby history that is still celebrated and remembered fondly. They proved that rugby's growth was genuinely spreading beyond the traditional powers of the Southern Hemisphere in New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa, and the Northern Hemisphere strongholds of England, France, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. New nations could compete at the highest level if given the opportunity, the proper support and coaching, and the belief that they genuinely belonged at this level. The final was a special occasion that captured the imagination of rugby fans worldwide. A moment that English rugby had been building toward for years with careful planning and preparation. Twickenham, the home of English rugby, steeped in over a century of tradition and history, with its famous stands full of members in blazers and ties, and its perfectly manicured pitch maintained to the highest standards. The stadium sits in southwest London in an affluent area, and on final day, it was transformed into a cathedral of rugby, draped in flags and banners. For the first time in the short history of the competition, a World Cup final would be played at Twickenham, at headquarters as it's known, at the spiritual home of the game in England. The stadium filled completely with over 50,000 spectators, creating an atmosphere of expectation and nervous energy. England on home soil, favored by many experts and pundits to win, seemingly destined by many observers to claim the Webb Ellis Cup in front of their own passionate fans. But Australia had other ideas entirely about how the final would play out. The Wallabies, who had co-hosted that first tournament 4 years earlier and finished a respectable third place, played with intelligence and patience that day at Twickenham. That frustrated and wore down their opponents. Their defense was superbly organized and relentless. A green and gold wall that gave England little room to breathe or create attacking opportunities. That tackled everything that moved and forced errors. Every time England tried to build an attack, tried to establish field position and pressure, tried to get their powerful forwards rolling, Australia's defensive line was there waiting, making tackles, slowing down the ruck ball, frustrating their opponents, preventing any rhythm or momentum from building. And when opportunities arose, when space suddenly appeared in the English defense for just a moment, they counterattacked with precision and purpose, exploiting gaps with clinical efficiency, making England pay for any mistake. It was rugby as chess, every move calculated carefully, every decision considered. patience rewarded with points on the board. When the final whistle blew at Twickenham after 80 minutes of intense rugby, when the referee signaled the end of this historic match, the scoreboard read 12 points to 6 in favor of Australia. Not a high-scoring spectacle for the neutral fan hoping for free-flowing rugby. Not a try-fest with ball in hand and running from everywhere, but a tense, gripping, hard-fought contest that had everyone on the edge of their seats throughout, wondering who would prevail in this tactical battle. Australia had done it through their excellent defense and smart game management. They were world champions for the first time in their rugby history. The Webb Ellis Cup was heading south, back to the Southern Hemisphere, to a nation that had co-hosted 4 years earlier, but fallen short of ultimate glory then when New Zealand dominated. And in the third-place playoff, a match often dismissed by some as the match nobody really wants to play, the game for the bronze medal, New Zealand, the defending champions who had won so convincingly and dominantly in 1987 on home soil, found some consolation and restored some pride. They defeated Scotland in what was a competitive encounter between two good teams, both showing pride and commitment despite their semi-final disappointments and dashed dreams. It was a reminder that even when you don't reach the final, even when your tournament doesn't go as planned and expectations aren't met, there is still pride to be salvaged, still a podium to stand upon, still honor in finishing third in the world. The 1991 World Cup showed us something important about the evolution of rugby union as it continued to develop. The game was changing, tactics were shifting and becoming more sophisticated, and power was spreading more evenly across the rugby-playing world rather than being concentrated in just a few nations. What worked brilliantly in 1987 might not work anymore just 4 years later, as teams adapted and learned. Rugby was growing up, maturing as a sport, becoming more professional in approach and preparation, even though it was still technically amateur with no player payments, and the competition was only getting fiercer with each passing year. Chapter 3, Rugby Meets History, 1995. We arrive now at 1995, and this is where rugby became far more than just a game, more than just a sporting competition between nations. This is where sport met history in one of those rare moments where a sporting event transcends its boundaries, where a tournament somehow transcended the ordinary boundaries of the playing field and touched the very soul of a wounded nation trying desperately to heal. This is the story of South Africa's World Cup, a tournament that would be remembered and celebrated not just for the quality of rugby played on the field, but for what it represented to millions of people, for what it meant in a much larger historical and social context. South Africa hosted their first ever Rugby World Cup in 1995, and the significance of this moment truly cannot be overstated enough, cannot be emphasized strongly enough. This was a nation returning to international rugby and international sport. After many long years of isolation, after decades of being banned from world sport due to the apartheid regime that had divided the country brutally along racial lines for nearly half a century, the world had turned its back on South Africa, and rightly so from a moral standpoint, refusing to play against them in any sport, refusing to acknowledge their sporting achievements, While the country remained divided by racial segregation and terrible oppression of the black majority by the white minority government. But now the country was emerging from that darkest chapter of its painful history, blinking in the light of a new democracy, trying to find its way forward. Nelson Mandela had been elected as the first black president in the nation's history just 1 year earlier in 1994, released from 27 years of imprisonment and ascending peacefully to the highest office. And rugby, this World Cup tournament, would become a powerful and emotional symbol of hope, of change, of reconciliation for a country and its people trying desperately to find their way forward together after decades of legislated racial hatred and division. 16 teams competed once again in 1995, maintaining the format that had served the tournament well since its inception, keeping the structure that was now familiar to rugby fans worldwide. But this tournament held special significance beyond just the numbers in the matches and the scores. It was the final World Cup of the amateur era, the very last time players would compete purely for the love of the game, for national pride and the honor of wearing their country's jersey, without professional contracts or salaries waiting for them back home after the tournament ended. After this tournament concluded, everything would change forever and quickly. Rugby union would officially go professional later in 1995, when the International Rugby Board would give in to the inevitable and declare the sport open, allowing players to be paid openly for the first time. Money would enter the game in a big way. Professionalism would transform everything about how the game was played, how players trained, how teams prepared. But in 1995, for one last beautiful moment, the old spirit remained alive. The amateur ethos that had defined rugby union for well over a century was still present. And then there was Jonah Lomu, and we must talk about Jonah Lomu because he was a phenomenon unlike anything rugby had ever seen. A young man from Auckland, New Zealand, just 20 years old, barely more than a teenager really, still learning his trade, who would become a global phenomenon that shocked and amazed the entire rugby world and captured mainstream sports attention globally, reaching far beyond rugby's traditional audience. His name would become known even to people who had never watched a rugby match in their entire lives. Standing and imposing 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighing around 260 pounds of pure athletic muscle and power, built like a superhero, he combined incredible size with blistering speed in a way rugby had genuinely never seen before, in a way that seemed to defy the laws of physics and challenge everything people thought they knew about what was physically possible on a rugby field. How could someone that big move that fast? It shouldn't be possible. But there he was, doing the impossible, match after match. He was a winger, wearing the number 11 jersey, traditionally a position for smaller, lighter, faster players who relied on footwork and agility and evasion, who scored tries by running around defenders. But Jonah Lomu didn't run around defenders. He ran straight through them like they weren't even there, like they were children trying to stop a charging bull. He trampled over international rugby players, leaving them sprawled on the ground behind him as he accelerated away toward the try line. His devastating performances, particularly in the semi-final against England, where he scored 4 incredible tries, scoring almost at will every time he touched the ball, left commentators and analysts searching desperately for adequate words to describe what they were witnessing, struggling to convey the sheer dominance. He was unstoppable, a genuine force of nature, something new in rugby, and suddenly everyone around the world, even people who had never watched rugby before in their lives, even people in countries where rugby was barely played, was talking about this incredible young athlete and the game he was dominating so completely. Jonah Lomu transcended rugby, became a global sports icon, proof that one player could change perceptions of an entire sport. Major matches were staged at iconic venues that would become forever etched in rugby folklore and in the memories of those fortunate enough to be there. Ellis Park in Johannesburg, a fortress of South African rugby, with its passionate crowds and intimidating atmosphere, with its location at high altitude, over 1,700 meters above sea level, that made the thin air make the ball travel further through it and made players' lungs work significantly harder with every breath and every sprint. Playing at Ellis Park was always physically demanding, and visiting teams often struggled with the altitude in the first half before adjusting. And Newlands in Cape Town, nestled at the foot of the stunning Table Mountain backdrop, one of the most beautiful rugby stadiums anywhere in the world, where the mountain watches over the field like a natural cathedral, where the setting sun creates a golden glow over the pitch that photographers love, where the surrounding vineyards and natural beauty make it feel special. These historic venues witnessed history being made with every match played, every scrum contested, every try scored during this remarkable tournament. France, with their traditional unpredictability and their famous flair for the dramatic and unexpected, beat England in the third-place playoff. It was some consolation for the French, a bronze medal to take home to Paris. But it offered small comfort for England, who had been on the wrong end of Jonah Lomu's unstoppable rampage in the semifinal. That semifinal haunted them. Third place is respectable in any World Cup, a position many nations would be proud to achieve. Proof that you were among the best 4 teams in the world. But when you've been demolished in such devastating fashion, when you've been made to look utterly helpless against a single player who seemed impossible to stop or even slow down, it's hard to take much satisfaction from a bronze medal match. Hard to feel anything but disappointment and frustration. The final itself was an epic encounter, a match that seemed destined to go down in history from the very moment the teams walked onto the field at Ellis Park on June 24, 1995. South Africa faced New Zealand, the team with Jonah Lomu, the team with all that attacking brilliance and power, the team with the aura of invincibility, the team everyone expected to win comfortably and claim their second world championship 8 years after their first. The betting markets heavily favored New Zealand. Surely no team could stop Jonah Lomu and the All Blacks. The match was incredibly tight from the first whistle, tense and physical and unrelenting, neither team giving even an inch of ground willingly. Neither team could pull away and establish any real dominance or control. South Africa's game plan was clear, and they stuck to it rigidly. Keep the ball away from the dangerous Jonah Lomu as much as possible, kick intelligently for territory, rely on their powerful forwards to win the physical battle up front. New Zealand tried desperately to get Lomu the ball in space where he could work his magic, but South Africa defended brilliantly and bravely, tackling everything that moved. The scores were level at full time after 80 exhausting, grueling minutes of intense rugby that had taken everything from both teams physically and mentally. They would need extra time to decide the World Championship, another 20 painful minutes of rugby to find a winner, 20 more minutes of physical and mental exhaustion for players already running on empty, their legs like lead. Joel Stransky, the South African fly half, would become the hero of the nation. In extra time, with just minutes remaining on the clock and tension unbearable, he dropped a goal from directly in front of the post, his second drop goal of the match. The ball sailed cleanly over the crossbar, and South Africa led by 3 precious points. New Zealand desperately tried to respond, tried frantically to get downfield for one last chance, but time ran out on them. When that final whistle eventually blew after extra time, after 100 grueling minutes of brutal, attritional, heart-stopping rugby that left both teams completely exhausted, the scoreboard read South Africa 15, New Zealand 12. Just 3 points separated the teams at the end of an exhausting battle that had pushed both sets of players to their absolute physical and mental limits. South Africa, the Springboks, had done it against all odds and all expectations. They had won the World Cup on home soil in their first tournament back in the international fold after years of painful exile and isolation from world sport. Ellis Park erupted in scenes of pure joy and raw emotion that went far beyond sport, far beyond what any game should reasonably mean to people. People were crying openly, embracing complete strangers in the stands, celebrating not just a rugby victory, but something much deeper and more meaningful, something that spoke to their deepest hopes for their troubled nation's future and healing. And then came the moment that defined not just the tournament, but perhaps defined the power of sport itself to change societies and bring divided people together across seemingly impossible divides. Nelson Mandela, the man who had spent 27 long years in prison on Robben Island for fighting against apartheid, who had emerged from that terrible ordeal without bitterness or desire for revenge, who had led his nation toward democracy and reconciliation rather than retribution, who had become South Africa's first Black president and a symbol of hope and forgiveness worldwide, walked slowly onto the field at Ellis Park, wearing a Springbok jersey with obvious pride. Not just any jersey, but the number 6 jersey of Captain Francois Pienaar, a white Afrikaner rugby player who represented a community that had long dominated and controlled South African rugby during the apartheid years. The Springbok emblem had been a controversial symbol of white South Africa for generations, an emblem that many Black South Africans had associated with oppression and their exclusion from a game that they were never allowed to play at the highest level during apartheid, never allowed even to attend matches except in segregated sections of stadiums. But here was Mandela, this extraordinary man who had every historical reason to hate and reject the Springbok symbol, instead embracing it warmly, deliberately reclaiming it, consciously transforming it into something new and inclusive, into a symbol that could belong to all South Africans regardless of their skin color. It was a calculated political gesture of remarkable vision, but also a deeply human one that spoke to his character. He presented the Webb Ellis Cup to Pinar with a warm smile, and the two men representing two different South Africas, two vastly different experiences and histories, shook hands firmly and shared a moment that transcended rugby completely, that spoke of genuine reconciliation, of choosing unity over division, of a nation trying courageously to heal its deep wounds together rather than tearing itself apart. The crowd, black and white supporters together in a way that would have been completely impossible just a few years earlier under apartheid's cruel laws, chanted in unison with genuine emotion, "Nelson, Nelson, Nelson," the sound echoing around Ellis Park, and for a brief, beautiful, precious moment that would be remembered and replayed forever, a deeply divided country felt truly united around their rugby team, around 15 men in green jerseys who represented them all, who had made them all proud. This tournament helped unite post-apartheid South Africa in ways that politics and legislation alone could never have achieved by themselves, in ways that speeches and government policies could not reach deep into people's hearts and change minds. Sport, this rugby tournament, had done what seemed genuinely impossible just years earlier when apartheid still ruled. It had brought black and white South Africans together in shared celebration. If only for a few weeks, if only around a rugby ball and a shared dream of victory and national pride. It wasn't a perfect solution to deep-seated problems of inequality and historical injustice that would take many generations to truly address and heal properly. The economic and social divides between races remain vast and troubling, but it was a meaningful and important start, a foundation of shared joy and national pride to build upon going forward. A moment when South Africans of all colors saw themselves reflected in their national team and felt part of something bigger than themselves, something hopeful. The 1995 World Cup cemented the Rugby World Cup status as a genuine global sporting spectacle, as an event that mattered far beyond the rugby community and its traditional followers around the world, as something that could capture mainstream attention and front-page headlines. This wasn't just about tries and tackles and scrums anymore. Wasn't just about which team was technically superior or physically stronger on the day. This was about what sport could represent at its absolute best, what it could achieve when it touches something deeper in the human spirit, how it could inspire millions and give hope to a nation trying to find its way through darkness toward light. Chapter 4, Expansion and Upsets, 1999. We move forward now to 1999, and the Rugby World Cup was about to show the world something new and exciting that would shape its future direction. This was a tournament of significant growth, of expansion beyond the traditional 16 teams that had competed in the first three tournaments, and of the kind of wonderful chaos and unpredictability that makes sport so utterly captivating and impossible to script in advance. Wales officially hosted the tournament, taking on the great responsibility and pride that comes with welcoming the rugby world to their passionate small nation, where rugby is not just a sport but an integral part of the cultural identity. But the matches weren't confined to Wales alone, weren't limited to Cardiff in the famous valleys where rugby has been played for over a century. They spread across the United Kingdom and even crossed the Channel into France, creating a truly multinational celebration of rugby union that showcased some of the sport's most historic and atmospheric venues. Stadiums in England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and France all played their important part in hosting this growing spectacle, each venue adding its own unique character and atmosphere to the tournament, each ground bringing its own history and traditions and passionate supporters. The tournament expanded significantly for the first time since its creation, growing from 16 teams that had competed in the first 3 World Cups to 20 teams competing, adding 4 more nations to the mix and giving more countries their chance to experience World Cup rugby. This was an important statement of intent by the IRB, a recognition that rugby was genuinely spreading across the globe, that more nations deserved their chance to compete on the biggest stage, to test themselves against the best teams in the world, to experience World Cup rugby firsthand and take those experiences home to help grow the game. 4 extra teams meant significantly more matches to play and watch, more stories to follow and enjoy, more opportunities for nations to announce themselves to the watching world, and for unknown players to become instant national heroes back home with one good performance on the big stage. Among those new participants was Namibia, making their World Cup debut and representing Southern African rugby beyond the powerhouse of South Africa, a nation from the southwestern coast of Africa, a country of dramatic desert landscapes and stunning coastlines and diverse wildlife, competing at the highest level of rugby for the first time in their history. They represented the growth of the game across the African continent, showing that rugby was genuinely taking root in places beyond its traditional stronghold in South Africa, where the game had been played since the late 1800s. Every debut is special and memorable. Every first appearance at a World Cup is a moment of enormous national pride that stays with a country forever. And Namibia embraced their opportunity with pride and determination and dignity, even though they lost all their pool matches. Argentina reached the quarterfinals with some excellent and memorable performances, and this was particularly significant for South American rugby and especially meaningful for Argentine rugby culture, where the sport is followed with passion. The Pumas had always been respected by those who followed international rugby closely, known for their passionate and physical style of play and fierce forward play, an incredible commitment and never say die attitude. But now they were signaling their genuine rise as a rugby power on the world stage, a team that could compete with anyone on their day. South American rugby, long dominated by Argentina, was no longer just about potential and promise and what might be possible in the future. It was about delivering tangible results in the present, about competing with the very best established teams in the world and genuinely holding your own through 80 grueling minutes. Argentina was rapidly becoming a force that the traditional established powers like New Zealand, Australia, England, France, and South Africa had to take seriously and prepare for carefully, a team that could no longer be underestimated or taken lightly in any match. A new quarterfinal playoff system was introduced and implemented to accommodate the expanded tournament format and ensure fairness for all competing nations. The structure was evolving and being carefully refined, adapting intelligently to include more teams while maintaining competitive integrity and ensuring the best teams progress fairly to the knockout stages. It was a clear sign that the organizers were learning valuable lessons with each tournament, experimenting and adapting, trying to find the optimal way to showcase rugby to the world while giving every team a genuinely fair chance to prove themselves on merit. The Millennium Stadium in Cardiff debuted as a major rugby venue during this tournament, and what a spectacular and memorable debut it turned out to be for this magnificent new ground. This stunning stadium, built with an innovative retractable roof that could be closed in bad weather to protect players and spectators, and a capacity of over 70,000 passionate fans, would very quickly become one of rugby's great cathedrals. A venue spoken of with reverence and genuine awe by players and fans alike who experienced it. It sat impressively in the heart of Cardiff city centre on the banks of the River Taff, a modern architectural marvel of engineering and design that would host the World Cup final and many other crucial matches. Welsh fans, internationally famous for their singing and passion for rugby, packed the stadium to the rafters for every match involving Wales and many others, creating an atmosphere that literally shook the very foundations of the building, their voices singing traditional Welsh hymns like Bread of Heaven and rugby songs echoing powerfully around the stands and inspiring their team to greater efforts. France produced one of the most famous and memorable moments in World Cup history during the semifinals, a comeback that is still talked about with wonder and disbelief today, over 2 decades later. They faced New Zealand in a match played at Twickenham, and the mighty All Blacks, perennial favorites and the best team in the world between World Cups, were expected by many experts, pundits, and betting markets to march confidently to the final and possibly claim their second title 12 years after their first triumph in 1987. New Zealand led comfortably at halftime by 24 points to 10, looking in complete and utter control of the match, seemingly cruising to victory with their superior fitness and skill and organization and experience. France had barely threatened in the first half, had barely created any meaningful attacking opportunities or looked like scoring. But France, gloriously unpredictable and dangerous as always, capable of absolute brilliance when the mood strikes and the inspiration flows, staged an astonishing and breathtaking second-half comeback that stunned the rugby world and became instant sporting legend. They scored try after magnificent try in the second half with incredible attacking rugby, running from everywhere with breathtaking speed and support play, playing with a freedom and joy that was beautiful to behold, finding gaps that hadn't existed moments before, turning the match completely on its head in the space of 20 breathtaking minutes of inspired rugby. The final score was an astonishing 43-31 in favor of France, having been down 24-10 at halftime. They had scored 33 unanswered points in the second half. New Zealand, the favorites, the team everyone had expected to see lifting the trophy in the final, were going home early in shock and profound disappointment. It was one of the greatest comebacks ever witnessed in rugby union history, a reminder that the game is genuinely never over until the final whistle blows. that anything can happen in rugby, that one team's moment of inspiration and brilliance can overcome another team's supposed superiority. Australia faced France in the final at the Millennium Stadium on November 6, 1999. And after that dramatic and unexpected semi-final victory over mighty New Zealand, many neutral observers wondered if France had one more miracle performance in them, one more impossible display of attacking rugby. Could they possibly do it again? Could they beat Australia and claim France's first ever World Cup title? But Australia, battle-hardened and experienced and mentally tough, with players who had been through big matches and intense pressure situations many times before in their careers, were too strong mentally and physically, too well organized and disciplined on the day. They controlled the final from start to finish, never allowing France to establish any rhythm or momentum or get their dangerous runners into space where they could create magic, winning 35 points to 12 in a comprehensive and dominant display of power rugby. It was a statement of Australian dominance at that moment in rugby history, proof that they were comfortably the best team in the world when it mattered most, able to perform consistently under the ultimate pressure. Australia became the first two-time champions in Rugby World Cup history, joining an exclusive club that only they occupied at that time. They had won in 1991 at Twickenham by beating England in a tense, low-scoring final, and now again in 1999 at the brand-new Millennium Stadium in Cardiff by comprehensively beating France. The Wallabies had firmly established themselves as a genuine rugby dynasty spanning the entire 1990s, a golden generation of Australian rugby players, a team that knew instinctively how to win when it mattered most, that consistently played their absolute best rugby in the biggest moments under the most intense pressure and scrutiny. Their names were etched permanently into World Cup folklore and rugby history books. Players like John Eales, the legendary captain and second-row lock forward known for his leadership, George Gregan, the scrum half, Stephen Larkham, the creative fly half, and many others became household names, not just in Australia, but worldwide among rugby fans. These men had proven themselves on the biggest stage repeatedly. South Africa beat New Zealand in the third-place playoff, a match between two proud rugby nations with a fierce rivalry, adding another chapter to one of rugby's greatest and most intense rivalries, built on decades of competition, a rivalry built on mutual respect and incredibly intense competition over many years dating back to 1921. For New Zealand, it was small and unsatisfying consolation after that utterly devastating semi-final loss to France, a match they had dominated completely for an hour before it all fell apart spectacularly in the second half. A match they absolutely should have won comfortably if they had just maintained their discipline and focus and composure. That semi-final loss would haunt New Zealand rugby for years, becoming another painful chapter in their World Cup struggles and so-called choking, despite being consistently the best team in the world between tournaments. For South Africa, the defending champions from 1995, it was a bronze medal to take home to Johannesburg and Cape Town, a reminder that they remained one of the world's absolute elite rugby nations, even if they hadn't managed to retain their crown from 4 years earlier, when they had won so memorably with Mandela presenting the trophy to Pienaar. The 1999 World Cup showed us clearly that rugby was genuinely expanding its borders beyond its traditional heartlands, welcoming new nations enthusiastically into the international fold, and creating drama and memorable moments that no scriptwriter could have written better or made more compelling. The game was growing steadily in popularity, becoming more global and inclusive, and the world was watching with increasing interest and engagement, with television audiences growing impressively year by year. Chapter 5, A Northern Hemisphere Breakthrough, 2003. We arrive now at 2003, and this is where history would be definitively broken, where a pattern that had held firm and seemingly unbreakable since the very first tournament in 1987 would finally be shattered in dramatic fashion. This is the story of the Northern Hemisphere's long-awaited breakthrough moment, a moment that changed everything people thought they knew and rewrote the entire narrative of world rugby and shifted the balance of power. Australia hosted the tournament for the second time in their history, bringing the Rugby World Cup back to where it had all begun 16 years earlier in 1987 when they co-hosted with New Zealand. 20 teams competed once again, maintaining the expanded format that had been successfully introduced 4 years earlier in Wales and had proven to work well and create good competition. Nations from every corner of the rugby-playing world descended upon Australia's shores during their beautiful spring season, crossing vast oceans and continents, traveling for days, ready to compete for the most prestigious and coveted prize in the sport. From established traditional powers with long histories to emerging rugby nations still building their programs and developing their talent, they all came with dreams of glory and hopes of creating their own piece of rugby history. The tournament set remarkable new attendance records and television viewing figures that demonstrated just how much the World Cup had grown in global popularity, cultural reach, and commercial value over its relatively short 16-year history since that first tournament. Stadiums across Australia, from Sydney's magnificent Olympic Stadium that had hosted the 2000 Olympics to Brisbane's impressive Suncorp Stadium, known for its atmosphere, from Melbourne's impressive Colonial Stadium to Perth's Subiaco Oval on the West Coast, were consistently packed with passionate fans wearing their national colors proudly, creating atmospheres that crackled with energy, anticipation, and raw emotion. And around the world, in living rooms and pubs and sports bars, in town squares and viewing parties organized specially from London to Tokyo, to Buenos Aires to Johannesburg, millions upon millions of people tuned in to watch the drama unfold on their television screens, making this the most watched Rugby World Cup in history up to that point. The sport was genuinely reaching audiences it had never reached before, transcending its traditional boundaries and becoming truly mainstream in a way it never had been, appearing on front pages of newspapers that normally ignored rugby entirely in favor of football or other sports. England reached the final as overwhelming favorites in the eyes of many experts, pundits, former players, and betting markets around the world. They had been building methodically and systematically toward this moment for years under head coach Clive Woodward, a former England player turned innovative coach who had brought a professional and innovative approach to English rugby that was revolutionary. They were constructing a team and a detailed game plan, playing a powerful, forward-dominated style of rugby that seemed perfectly designed and ideally suited for knockout tournament football, where defense and set pieces often determine outcomes, and where mental strength matters as much as physical ability. Their pack of forwards was immense and dominant, an 8-man unit that could dominate any team. They won ball consistently, winning scrum after scrum with their powerful pushing. Their goal kicker, Johnny Wilkinson, was remarkably reliable under extreme pressure, able to slot penalties and drop goals from anywhere on the field. And their defensive organization was suffocating and methodical, barely giving opponents room to breathe or create. They marched through the tournament with growing confidence and clear purpose, dismantling opponents with clinical efficiency, looking every bit like potential world champions destined for glory. Australia surprised many observers and commentators by reaching the final on home soil, defying some expectations. As hosts and two-time champions with World Cup pedigree and valuable experience from winning twice before, they were always dangerous and could never be completely discounted or underestimated. But this Australian team wasn't considered by many as strong or as talented as some of their illustrious predecessors from 1991 and 1999, who had won with real style. Yet they fought their way through the tournament with great determination and grit, riding the powerful wave of home support that lifted them in difficult moments when the pressure mounted, playing with the freedom and confidence that comes from having an entire nation of passionate rugby fans behind you, urging you forward with every tackle and run. The Wallabies were in another World Cup final, and Stadium Australia in Sydney, a magnificent cauldron of 82,000 people, would be the venue for this historic showdown between Northern and Southern Hemisphere rugby philosophies. The final went to extra time after 80 minutes of brutal rugby, and the tension was almost unbearable for everyone watching, whether in the stadium or around the world in the early hours of the morning. After 80 minutes of brutal, attritional, physically exhausting rugby that tested every player to their limits, the teams were locked together in a deadlock at 14 points each. England and Australia, Northern Hemisphere against Southern Hemisphere, old tradition against recent dominance and success. Two rugby philosophies and styles colliding dramatically on the biggest stage imaginable. Everything that had been built over the previous weeks of the tournament, all the preparation and sacrifice and endless training sessions, came down to an additional 20 minutes of rugby that would determine who lifted the Webb Ellis Cup. Players' legs were heavy like lead, lungs were burning with exhaustion, but neither team would yield even an inch. Pride and history and glory were on the line, and everyone could feel the enormous weight of the moment. And then came the moment that would define not just the tournament, not just the year, but an entire era of English rugby, and would be replayed thousands upon thousands of times in the years to come, becoming one of sport's most iconic and memorable moments that would define a generation. Johnny Wilkinson, England's fly half and goal-kicking extraordinaire, received the ball in the dying seconds of extra time with just 26 seconds remaining on the clock. The clock was running down relentlessly. Australia were defending desperately with everything they had, throwing everything at England, trying to force a critical mistake or turnover that could change everything. Wilkinson dropped back into the pocket, positioned himself carefully just 30 meters out from the Australian posts, slightly to the right of the center. He took the pass from scrum half Matt Dawson, took one deliberate step forward with his right foot to steady himself and create the perfect space, and struck a drop goal with his trusted right foot, the foot he had practiced with tens of thousands of times. The ball sailed through the Sydney night sky, tumbling end over end, and passed perfectly between the posts. Stadium Australia fell into stunned, shocked silence, except for the section of English fans in one corner, who erupted in absolute joy and disbelief. It was 20 points to 17 with just seconds remaining on the clock. Moments later, after Australia desperately tried one final attack from the restart in hope of a miracle, the referee blew the final whistle. England beat Australia in Sydney in front of 82,000 fans, most of them Australian, most of them utterly heartbroken at seeing victory in the World Cup snatched away in the cruelest possible fashion imaginable, with the last kick of the match. It was one of the most dramatic and unforgettable finishes in World Cup history, decided by a single perfectly executed kick in the final minute of extra time when the pressure was at its absolute peak. Jonny Wilkinson became an instant legend overnight, a household name even among people who knew absolutely nothing about rugby and had never watched a match before. His name and that kick would be forever associated with that one perfect moment of execution under the most intense pressure imaginable. That moment when everything was on the line and the entire rugby world was watching. England became the first Northern Hemisphere champions in Rugby World Cup history, and the significance of this historic achievement cannot be overstated or emphasized enough. Since 1987, every single World Cup, without exception, had been won by a team from the Southern Hemisphere. New Zealand in 1987, Australia in 1991 and 1999, South Africa in 1995. The Southern Hemisphere had shared the Webb Ellis Cup between them for 16 years, establishing what seemed like an unbreakable Southern Hemisphere dominance and superiority, a natural order that people had come to accept as inevitable. But now England had shattered that monopoly completely, had proven beyond any doubt that Northern Hemisphere rugby could compete with and defeat the best teams in the world at the very highest level when it mattered most. It was a seismic shift in the rugby world, a watershed moment that changed perceptions fundamentally, shifted expectations, and redistributed the balance of power, giving hope to all Northern Hemisphere nations that they too could win. New Zealand beat France in the third-place playoff, claiming the bronze medal and some small consolation after their tournament disappointment. For the All Blacks, it was bitterly disappointing given their sky-high expectations coming into the tournament as one of the clear favorites. They were always among the favorites at every World Cup, always considered genuine contenders with their incredible talent and proud tradition, always expected to challenge seriously for the title. Yet once again, they had fallen agonizingly short of their ultimate goal in the semifinals when it mattered. For France, fourth place was still a respectable finish, having occupied that position before in their World Cup journey, always capable of moments of brilliance but somehow unable to sustain consistency for an entire tournament. This tournament's format, with its carefully balanced 20 teams, its pool stages that gave everyone a fair chance, and its knockout structure that created intense drama and tested mental fortitude, became the firmly established blueprint for future World Cups going forward. The organizers had found a system that worked effectively and fairly, that balanced inclusivity with competitive integrity, that created compelling drama for television audiences and showcased the very best rugby the world had to offer. This proven template would be used and gradually refined in the tournaments to come over the next 2 decades. The 2003 World Cup reminded us powerfully that history exists to be broken, that patterns and dominance last only until someone comes along with the courage, ability, and unshakable belief to shatter them completely. England had done exactly that with one kick, one moment of brilliance under pressure, and rugby would never quite be the same again. The Northern Hemisphere had proven conclusively it could reach the summit of world rugby. Rest now knowing that even the longest periods of dominance eventually end, and that sometimes all it takes is one perfect kick at the perfect moment to change history forever and inspire a nation. Let the story of these tournaments wash over you as you drift toward peaceful sleep, dreaming of rugby fields and roaring crowds and moments of sporting greatness. Chapter 6: Defense, Drama, and Argentina's Rise, 2007. We move forward now to 2007, 4 years after England's dramatic triumph, and this tournament would be defined by tight contests, defensive battles, and the remarkable rise of a nation that had been knocking persistently on the door for years, demanding to be taken seriously as a genuine rugby power. The tournament was hosted mainly by France, with matches also taking place in Wales and Scotland, spreading the rugby celebration across multiple passionate rugby nations. Europe once again welcomed the rugby world with open arms, stadiums from Paris to Edinburgh preparing enthusiastically to host the greatest show in the sport. The atmosphere across these rugby-mad nations was electric with anticipation and excitement, with tickets selling out months in advance. 20 teams competed again, maintaining the format that had proven successful and fair in the previous 2 tournaments. The structure was familiar now to everyone, pools leading inevitably to knockouts, every match carrying enormous weight and serious consequences. Teams arrived knowing exactly what was required to progress, what standards needed to be met and maintained throughout the tournament. The matches became notably defense-heavy throughout this tournament, marking a significant shift in how the game was being played at the highest level by the best teams in the world. Scores were lower than in previous World Cups. Tries were harder to come by and celebrate, and forward battles dominated matches rather than exciting backline play. Rugby was going through a distinct defensive phase where coaching had become more sophisticated and scientific, where organization and structure and discipline could nullify even the most talented attacking players with flair. It wasn't always pretty or entertaining to watch for neutral fans. Wasn't always the free-flowing and exciting rugby that draws new fans to the sport. But it was intense and gripping and tense, with every single point hard-earned through sustained pressure. England suffered a heavy pool loss early in the tournament to South Africa by a score of 36-0, a humiliating shutout, and many experts and commentators wrote them off completely as serious contenders for the title. They had been world champions just 4 years earlier in that dramatic final in Sydney with Wilkinson's drop goal. But now they looked vulnerable and weak, beatable by anyone, past their prime with many of their stars from 2003, aging and slower. Yet somehow, remarkably, they recovered and rediscovered their form and confidence at exactly the right time when it mattered most. They ground out hard-fought victories through sheer determination, relied heavily on their experienced players who had been there before and won in 2003, and remarkably reached the final once more against the odds, defying all predictions and expectations from pundits who had dismissed them. Fiji knocked Wales out in a stunning upset to reach the quarterfinals, breaking Welsh hearts across the nation. The Pacific Islanders played with their trademark flair and physicality that makes them so exciting to watch, combining blistering speed and raw power in equal measure, overwhelming the Welsh who were playing at home in Cardiff with their passionate fans behind them, singing hymns. It was crushing heartbreak for Wales, who had dreamed of going further in front of home crowds, but pure joy for Fiji, who once again proved they could compete with and beat anyone on their day when everything clicked and they played with freedom. Argentina beat France twice during the tournament in historic fashion, and this was remarkable and historically significant for Argentine rugby. The first time came in the opening match of the entire tournament when Argentina shocked the hosts in Paris at the Stade de France, announcing their intentions immediately and dramatically, silencing the expectant French crowd. It was a powerful statement of intent, proof that they had arrived as a major force to be reckoned with. Then they did it again in the third-place playoff weeks later, confirming that the first victory was absolutely no fluke or one-off. Beating the host once is impressive and memorable for any nation. Doing it twice in the same tournament is extraordinary and unprecedented in World Cup history. Argentina finished third, their best ever result at a Rugby World Cup, and a genuinely proud moment in their rugby history that is still celebrated today. The Pumas had arrived as a genuine force in world rugby, no longer just the plucky underdogs from South America, but a team to be genuinely feared and respected. Led by inspirational captain Agustin Pichot and outstanding performances throughout their squad, and guided by excellent tactical coaching, they had proven conclusively they belonged among the elite nations of world rugby. South American rugby had its long-awaited moment in the global spotlight, and Argentina seized it firmly with both hands, playing with passion, precision, and pride. France finished fourth despite hosting the tournament on home soil, a disappointing and frustrating outcome for a proud nation with such high hopes and massive expectations from their passionate supporters. They had played some excellent and attractive rugby at times throughout the tournament, shown flashes of their famous unpredictable flair and ability to create something magical from nothing, but ultimately fell short when it mattered most in the knockout stages under pressure. The home crowd at the Stade de France witnessed heartbreak and disappointment rather than glory and celebration, tears rather than champagne. South Africa beat England in the final at the Stade de France in Paris on October 20th, 2007. The score was 15-6, Not a high-scoring affair or a spectacle of free-flowing attacking rugby, but a tense defensive struggle and physical war of attrition between two powerful forward packs. South Africa's forwards dominated the breakdown completely. Their defense was immense and impenetrable, barely giving England any attacking opportunities or space to create. And they controlled the match from start to finish with iron discipline and immense power. England, physically and emotionally exhausted from their remarkable recovery through the tournament after that opening defeat, had nothing left to give in the final when it mattered. South Africa became two-time champions, joining Australia in that exclusive club of nations who had won multiple World Cup titles. The Springboks had won it memorably in 1995 on home soil in that famous emotional final with Mandela presenting the trophy to Pienaar. And now, 12 years later, they stood once again on top of the rugby world. Their rugby was built solidly on power, relentless physicality, and an unyielding defense that simply would not break under any pressure or sustained attack. The 2007 World Cup showed us clearly that rugby comes in distinct cycles, that different styles and approaches dominate different eras of the game. This was undeniably the era of defense, of brutal forward play, of matches won consistently by the team that made fewer mistakes and maintained discipline throughout 80 minutes. And it showed us definitively that Argentina had truly arrived on the world stage as a force to be reckoned with for years to come. Chapter 7, Home Pressure and Redemption, 2011. We arrive at 2011, and the Rugby World Cup returned to New Zealand, back to where it all began 24 years earlier in 1987. But this time, the weight of expectation and intense national hope would be almost unbearable for the host nation and their beloved All Blacks, who carried the dreams of an entire country. This was New Zealand's first fully professional era hosted tournament, and the contrast with 1987 could not have been starker or more pronounced. When they had co-hosted that inaugural World Cup 24 years earlier, rugby was still amateur, players had regular day jobs during the week, and played for pure love of the game on weekends. Now in 2011, rugby was a fully professional sport with all the intensity, relentless media scrutiny, massive commercial pressure, and overwhelming public expectation that comes with modern elite athletics at the highest level. The All Blacks hadn't won a World Cup since that first tournament in 1987, and the entire nation of New Zealand desperately, almost desperately, wanted them to end that agonizing drought on home soil in front of their own people. 20 teams competed once again, with the familiar and proven pool and knockout format now well established and refined over 6 tournaments. Teams from across the globe, from every rugby-playing continent, descended on New Zealand's stunning landscapes and dramatic scenery, filling stadiums from Auckland in the north to Wellington on the coast. From earthquake-damaged Christchurch, which had been devastated just months earlier, to the beautiful and picturesque city of Dunedin in the far south. The tournament atmosphere was incredible and electric throughout, New Zealand proving to be passionate, meticulously organized, and genuinely welcoming host despite the enormous pressure and weight their national team was carrying on their shoulders throughout every match. Tonga shocked France in the pool stage with a famous and memorable victory. And it was a genuine upset that sent ripples of surprise and delight through the tournament and delighted neutral observers worldwide. The Pacific Island nation played with raw physical power, incredible heart and warrior spirit, and the kind of pure joy that makes rugby so compelling and beautiful to watch. They physically overwhelmed a French team that seemed disorganized and uncertain of their game plan and strategy, lacking the cohesion and unity needed at this level of competition. It was a wonderful and timely reminder that on any given day in rugby, when passion and execution align perfectly, the so-called smaller nations can genuinely compete with and even defeat the traditional established powers of world rugby, who have vastly more resources. France somehow reached the final despite internal turmoil, discord, and serious dysfunction that had plagued their entire campaign from the very beginning of the tournament. There were widespread reports circulating in the media of serious player disputes, significant coaching tensions and disagreements, heated arguments behind closed doors, and general disharmony within the squad that occasionally spilled into public view embarrassingly. They looked vulnerable and unconvincing at times throughout the tournament, uncertain and fragile even in their victories and narrow escapes from elimination. Yet somehow they kept managing to win the matches that mattered most when elimination loomed large. French rugby can be beautifully chaotic, magnificently unpredictable, and maddeningly inconsistent all at once. And this particular tournament exemplified all of those contradictory qualities absolutely perfectly in one team. The final was played at Eden Park in Auckland on October 23, 2011, the same historic and iconic venue where New Zealand had won that first World Cup back in 1987, 24 years earlier. The stadium was a cauldron of raw emotion, every single seat filled with nervous anticipation, desperate hope, and barely contained anxiety. This was the moment an entire nation of just over 4 million people had been waiting for, had been collectively dreaming about and obsessing over for more than 2 long decades. The pressure on the All Blacks was immense, suffocating and almost unbearable to watch for their supporters. New Zealand beat France 8-7 in what might genuinely be the most tense, nerve-wracking, anxiety-inducing final in the entire history of the World Cup across all 7 tournaments. It wasn't beautiful, flowing rugby that showcased the sport at its best. It wasn't a spectacular tri-fest that neutrals would enjoy rewatching for entertainment. It was brutal, attritional, error-strewn, and agonizingly close from the first whistle to the very last. Just one single solitary point separated the teams when the final whistle mercifully blew and released years of accumulated tension. France had genuine chances to win it in the closing stages, several moments where they came agonizingly close to snatching an unlikely victory. But New Zealand's desperate and heroic defense held absolutely firm when it had to, when it mattered most. The relief that swept through Eden Park and across the entire country of New Zealand was almost tangible and visible. Years of accumulated tension and anxiety releasing in one enormous collective exhale of pure emotion. Australia beat Wales in the third-place playoff, claiming the bronze medal in what was a competitive and hard-fought match between 2 proud rugby nations. For Wales, who had performed admirably and courageously throughout the tournament with some excellent performances, It was genuine disappointment after coming so tantalizingly close to reaching their first ever World Cup final. For Australia, the mighty Wallabies, who always expected to compete for the title itself based on their history and tradition, third place was some small consolation, but fell far short of what they had genuinely hoped and expected to achieve as one of the pre-tournament favorites based on their form. New Zealand won at home for the second time in their history, beautifully bookending that long and painful 24-year gap between their first title in 1987 and this hard-fought second triumph in 2011. The symmetry was almost poetic and deeply meaningful, winning at the same Eden Park Stadium in both tournament victories. But the journey between those two glorious moments of triumph had been extraordinarily long, frequently painful, and filled with crushing disappointments and heartbreaking near misses that had scarred the nation. The All Blacks ended a 24-year title drought that had become a genuine national obsession and source of ongoing frustration and self-examination. Since winning in 1987, they had been overwhelming favorites at nearly every subsequent World Cup, consistently ranked as the best team in the world between tournaments with dominant performances in international rugby. Yet they had repeatedly and inexplicably failed to deliver victory when the unique pressure of the World Cup arrived every 4 years. They had experienced devastating quarterfinal exits that shocked the rugby world, heartbreaking semi-final losses that seemed impossible, and the crushing weight of national expectation had seemed to paralyze them at crucial moments when it mattered. But in 2011, at home with millions watching both in stadiums and on television screens across the country, they finally delivered when it mattered most. The celebration across New Zealand wasn't wild or euphoric immediately. It was profound relief mixed with genuine joy and tears, the lifting of an enormous psychological burden that had sat heavily on New Zealand rugby and the entire nation for nearly a quarter century. The 2011 World Cup reminded us powerfully that sometimes the pressure of home expectation, of an entire nation's hopes and dreams resting squarely on your shoulders, is the heaviest weight any athlete can possibly carry in sport. New Zealand had carried that seemingly impossible burden through an entire tournament of intense pressure and emerged victorious by the narrowest imaginable margin of just 1 point. Chapter 8, The Greatest Upset and Southern Dominance, 2015. We move forward to 2015, and this tournament would give us perhaps the greatest upset in rugby history that would be talked about for generations, alongside a stark reminder of where the balance of power and rugby excellence still lay in world rugby, despite England's 2003 triumph. The tournament was hosted by England, with some matches also taking place in Cardiff, Wales. English stadiums from the iconic Twickenham to impressive venues in Manchester, Newcastle, and other cities prepared to welcome the rugby world with great anticipation. The home nation carried enormous expectations and pressure, the weight of hosting bringing both national pride and intense pressure to perform. England were expected by their passionate supporters and media to perform well, to reach at least the semi-finals as a bare minimum, possibly even challenge seriously for the title on home soil 12 years after their 2003 triumph. The draw had created what immediately became known throughout the rugby world as the Pool of Death. a nightmare scenario that included 3 genuine World Cup contenders, all grouped together in one impossible and unforgiving pool. England, Wales, and Australia found themselves facing each other in the same pool, knowing with absolute certainty that at least one major rugby nation, one team with realistic title ambitions and proud history, would be going home early in humiliation before the knockout stages even began. The tension in that pool was extraordinary and almost unbearable from the very first match. Every single game felt like a knockout encounter where defeat meant likely elimination from the tournament. England were eliminated in the pool stage as hosts, becoming only the second host nation ever to suffer this crushing and embarrassing humiliation after Wales had experienced it back in 1991. The disappointment was absolutely crushing for English rugby and for the millions of passionate fans who had believed their team would thrive under home pressure and expectation. They had invested enormous financial and emotional resources in hosting, in meticulous preparation over years, in building and developing a team they believed was genuinely capable of winning on home soil and repeating their 2003 glory. Yet they failed to even escape their pool and reach the quarterfinals. The nation was stunned into disbelief. The media coverage was merciless and unforgiving with harsh criticism, and the recriminations and inquests lasted for many months afterward, with heads rolling. Japan shocked South Africa with an absolutely astonishing 34-32 victory in Brighton that sent shockwaves around the rugby world and reverberated far beyond rugby into mainstream global sports media and front pages. This wasn't merely an upset in the traditional sporting sense. This was genuinely one of the greatest sporting upsets in any sport, in any competition, in any era of athletic history. South Africa were two-time world champions with 1995 and 2007 titles, a genuine powerhouse of world rugby with a fearsome reputation and incredible physical presence. Japan were considered complete no-hopers by most observers and experts. A team there to participate and make up the numbers, rather than genuinely compete for victories against the top teams. Yet in Brighton on England's sunny south coast, Japan played with incredible speed that left South Africa's big forwards struggling, remarkable skill and precision in their handling, immense physical courage in defense, and unwavering self-belief and confidence that never wavered. They scored a match-winning try in the dying seconds of the match through Karn Hesketh diving over in the corner to snatch the most unlikely of victories, and the entire rugby world stood in absolute disbelief at what they had witnessed. Commentators and analysts struggled to find adequate words to describe what they had just seen. Fans were crying with emotion. It was magical, genuinely inspiring, and utterly unforgettable sporting theater that transcended rugby. Tier 2 nations gained genuine momentum and credibility from strong performances throughout the tournament that suggested the gap was closing. Japan's remarkable and historic victory inspired others, demonstrating conclusively that with the right preparation over years, quality coaching and support, proper resources and facilities, and genuine belief in themselves and their abilities, the gap between the traditional established powers and emerging rugby nations could indeed be bridged significantly. Georgia, Namibia, Uruguay, and other developing rugby nations put in genuinely credible performances that suggested the sport was growing globally and becoming more competitive at the highest level. All 4 semifinalists came from the Southern Hemisphere, and this was a stark and undeniable statement about where rugby's strength and excellence was concentrated at that particular moment in time. New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, and Argentina made up the final 4 teams competing for the Webb Ellis Cup. Not a single Northern Hemisphere team reached the semifinals, despite England hosting the tournament on their own soil with all the advantages that brings. It was a demonstration of complete Southern Hemisphere dominance that was impossible to ignore, dismiss, or explain away with excuses about bad luck or refereeing decisions. New Zealand beat Australia 34-17 in the final at Twickenham, and it was a comprehensive masterclass in clinical, ruthless, world-class rugby execution and excellence. The All Blacks were simply too good on the day, too perfectly organized in their structure and game plan, too experienced in big matches and pressure situations, too skilled individually and collectively as a team. Australia fought hard with pride and determination and never gave up, but they were systematically and comprehensively outclassed by a New Zealand team operating at the absolute peak of their considerable powers and playing near-perfect rugby. Dan Carter, the legendary fly half widely considered the greatest rugby player of his entire generation, orchestrated the victory beautifully and masterfully in what would be his final international test match appearance. Going out on top, New Zealand retained the World Cup title for the first time in tournament history, becoming the first nation ever to successfully defend their crown across 2 separate tournaments 4 years apart. They had won in 2011 at home in Auckland under immense national pressure, surviving that agonizing 8-7 nail-biter against France. And now 4 years later, they had done it again brilliantly on the other side of the world in England with a dominant performance. The consistency of excellence, the ability to maintain the highest possible standards over that extended 4-year period was truly remarkable and unprecedented in World Cup history. They became the first 3-time champions in Rugby World Cup history, standing completely alone at the summit of world rugby achievement with no equals. New Zealand now had titles from 1987 when it all began, and they dominated. From 2011 when they ended their agonizing drought at home, and now from 2015 when they defended successfully with style. Their sustained dominance of world rugby was complete and unchallengeable. Their legacy as the greatest rugby nation in history absolutely secure beyond any reasonable debate or argument. Other countries had won multiple World Cups over the years, but none had reached the pinnacle of 3 titles to stand alone. The tournament drew massive global television audiences, breaking viewing records around the world and introducing millions of new fans to rugby union for the first time. From Tokyo to Buenos Aires, from Johannesburg to London, from Sydney to Paris, hundreds of millions of people tuned in to watch the drama unfold on their screens. Japan's stunning and historic victory over South Africa became one of the most watched and most shared rugby moments ever recorded in the sport's history, replayed millions of times on social media platforms worldwide, introducing countless new fans to the beauty, drama, and unpredictability of rugby union. Rugby's global footprint was expanding rapidly into new markets and demographics that had never engaged with the sport before. The 2015 World Cup showed us that rugby could still surprise us profoundly, could still deliver moments that transcend the sport itself and become part of broader sporting folklore and cultural history. It showed us that underdogs could dare to dream and occasionally, with courage and skill and belief, make those impossible dreams become glorious reality against all odds. And it showed us that New Zealand, at that particular moment in rugby history, were simply untouchable and unbeatable at the highest level of the game. Chapter 9, A New Continent Embraces Rugby, 2019. We arrive at 2019, and the Rugby World Cup was about to break genuinely new ground, traveling to a continent that had never hosted the tournament before in its 32-year history, to a nation that would embrace rugby with extraordinary passion, meticulous organization, and infectious enthusiasm that won hearts worldwide. Japan hosted the first Rugby World Cup in Asia, and this was a genuinely momentous occasion for the sport's global expansion and future growth beyond its traditional bases. Rugby was finally moving beyond its traditional strongholds concentrated in Europe, the Pacific Islands, and Southern Africa, where the game had been played for over a century. Asia, with its billions of people, emerging and growing sports markets, and increasing interest in international athletics and global sports, was getting its long-awaited and well-deserved chance to host the greatest show in rugby. Japan had earned this prestigious opportunity through their impressive on-field performances over many years, particularly their stunning 2015 victory over South Africa, and their proven ability to organize major international sporting events with precision, efficiency, and warmth. Japan beat Ireland in one of the tournament's biggest and most stunning shocks that reverberated around the rugby world, and then went on to top their pool with authority and confidence. Ireland came into the tournament as genuine favorites based on their recent form, ranked number 1 in the world rankings, with legitimate expectations of reaching at least the semifinals and perhaps even challenging seriously for the title for the first time. But Japan, playing with incredible speed that their opponents couldn't match, clinical precision in execution, tactical intelligence and discipline, and riding a powerful wave of passionate home support that lifted them, dismantled them completely in a performance that left the rugby world speechless and in awe. The victory sent shockwaves through the tournament and announced loudly that Japan's 2015 heroics against South Africa in Brighton were absolutely no fluke or one-off miracle. This team was genuinely world-class and a force to be reckoned with. Japan reached the quarterfinals for the first time in their rugby history, and the entire nation celebrated this historic achievement with immense pride and joy that was visible everywhere. They had progressed from pool stages on merit through genuinely outstanding performances against established rugby powers who had far more experience. The streets of Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and cities across the Japanese archipelago were filled with fans wearing the red and white colors of the Brave Blossoms, celebrating their team's remarkable and historic run with traditional celebrations. Rugby had captured the imagination and hearts of an entire country in a way few international observers had predicted was possible in a nation where baseball and sumo wrestling traditionally dominated. Typhoon Hagibis, A devastating and powerful natural disaster forced match cancellations during the tournament in an unprecedented and difficult situation. This was completely unprecedented in World Cup history, with matches being officially called off due to a massive Category 5 typhoon bearing down on Japan with destructive and deadly force. The safety of players, fans, coaching staff, and officials had to come first above all sporting considerations and competitive fairness debates. Some teams were understandably frustrated by the disruption to their careful preparations and momentum, but everyone understood the genuine severity of the dangerous situation facing the country. The typhoon caused significant damage, severe flooding, and tragic loss of life across parts of Japan, putting rugby and sport into proper perspective and reminding everyone what truly matters. South Africa lost a pool match to New Zealand in their group stage encounter, marking a significant moment in tournament history and dynamics. While the Springboks were not the